What are the most chilling, terrifying cases of missing people? Story 1. Pilot Ben Padilla. In 2003, pilot Ben Padilla and his mechanic secretly stole a Boeing 727 from an airport in Angola, leaving behind only mysterious traces. Their actions caused shock and raised many questions. Why did they take off? Where were they headed? And what happened to the plane? Ben's brother insists that Ben would not have flown voluntarily, suggesting that he might have been forced into hijacking the plane by terrorists. However, Ben himself had expressed fears, saying he would rather crash the plane than follow terrorist orders. Ben's sister believes he may have been drawn into illegal activities, possibly becoming a victim of someone controlling the airport or being taken against his will somewhere in Africa. The family has done everything possible to find answers, but the main theory is that Ben may not have fully understood the danger and could have been manipulated by someone on board. Ben's fate remains a mystery. After carrying out mysterious instructions, he likely became a liability. The main question now is, who needed the Boeing 727 and where is it now? This story is full of intrigue and unsolved mysteries, leaving many questions about Ben Padilla's fate and his enigmatic flight. Comment. What I find interesting about Ben Padilla's case is that even though the plane was stolen from Angola, it prompted the FBI and CIA to deploy significant resources. This is unusual, even if the plane was suspected to be stolen for drug trafficking or arms smuggling, both plausible assumptions for a 727 hijacking. They're easily converted for cargo. This is typically an Interpol matter. To me, this suggests that either Ben Padilla or John Mutantu, the Congolese mechanic involved, had some connection to a group under CIA surveillance. Story 2. The disappearance of Lars Mittank, a mystery shrouded in secrecy. A vacation in Bulgaria turned into a sinister mystery for Lars Mittank. After a street fight, he suffered an injuria, ruptured eardrum. A doctor prescribed antibiotics, but these medications were not known to cause any side effects that could explain his strange behavior. Yet after this injury, Lars began to exhibit alarming changes. While his friends returned home, Lars stayed behind for a few days to recover and undergo a follow-up medical examination. But the longer he stayed alone in Bulgaria, the more paranoid and mysterious his behavior became. He sent his family disturbing messages, claiming he was in danger and urgently asking them to cancel his credit card. Finally, the day of his flight arrived. Lars arrived at the airport, but before checking in, went to the medical clinic to get clearance to fly with his injury. This is where the story took a terrifying turn. While waiting in line, Lars suddenly jumped up and ran out of the airport as if being chased. Cameras captured his last sprint was never seen outside the airport again. What made Lars Mittank run, as if from an invisible threat? Who or what drove him to this state? And where is he now? These questions remain unanswered, making Lars's disappearance one of the most unsettling and inexplicable mysteries of modern times. Comment. Lars might have had an undiagnosed head injury from the fight. This could have caused hallucinations and explained his strange behavior. It's surprising that with a ruptured eardrum, no one considered possible brain damage. But given that he barely ate, acted unusually, and was anxious, a psychotic episode can't be ruled out. Add his claims of conflicts with Germans and threats from Russians, and the question arises, was it a breakdown, an injury, or was someone truly trying to intimidate or harm him? A mystery with too many questions and too few answers. Story 3. Gone Forever. The mysterious disappearance of Kristen Smart. Kristen Smart was an ordinary college student who went to a party one night and never returned home. Her last steps were accompanied by 3 students, but one of them immediately drew the attention of investigators. The next day, he had a black eye and scratches on his hands and knees. When the search for Kristen began, cadaver dogs pointed to his dorm mattress. But he remained silent, invoking the Fifth Amendment. This was just the beginning of eerie coincidences. The same week Kristen disappeared, concrete work was done in his mother's backyard. Later, the family that moved into the house found a bloody earring in the garden, but the police lost the earring before they could test whose blood it was. Years have passed. But Kristen's body has never been found. And the prime suspect? He's still free, living quietly in Southern California. A story with too many mysteries and too little justice. Comment: It angers me how often this happens in cold cases. Good old human incompetence or corruption usually leads to evidence being lost. No wonder cases remain unsolved when crucial evidence just disappears. If the police had all the evidence, the case wouldn't be cold, right? Yes, a cold case is one where there are no new leads or evidence for a long time. But how many of these cases could have been solved if important evidence hadn't vanished into thin air? Story 4. The Box Under the Bed. The survival story of Colleen Stan. Colleen Stan endured what many can hardly imagine. She was kidnapped by a married couple and kept in a box under their bed for 7 years, allowed out for only 1 hour a day. They forced her to sign a contract, turning her into a lifelong sex slave, and convinced her that a mysterious corporate syndicate was watching her and would kill her and her family if she tried to escape. 7 long years of fear, pain, and loneliness. But Colleen survived and, despite all the horrors, found the strength to return to a normal life. What's chilling is that the wife, who was complicit, eventually turned in her husband and was set free, while the husband was sentenced to 104 years. Both now live in California, and he even had a parole hearing in 2022. Insane? Absolutely. But Colleen's story is also one of incredible resilience. Comment: Yes, I read a book about this many years ago. Such horror! They brainwashed her into not leaving and used it against her in court. The girl in the box. Sometimes our legal system just isn't equipped for the absolute horrors humanity can devise. I'm glad the husband is serving life, but I can't believe the wife is free. Story 5. William Tyrrell's disappearance. In 2014, in a small town in New South Wales, Australia, 3-year-old William Tyrrell vanished from his foster grandmother's yard. His disappearance became one of the most high-profile and mysterious cases in the country, capturing the attention of all Australia. This year, the case regained attention as a coroner's inquest began, and the lead detective was suspended over allegations of misconduct. This case is not only baffling but also heartbreaking. William's family, despite all the difficulties, has already endured much suffering. And the poor boy, whose life began under the toughest circumstances, found himself at the center of this tragedy. It remains unclear what happened to little William, and this case remains one of the most painful and unsolved mysteries in Australian history. Story 6. A terrifying mystery with incomplete answers. This is a story that terrifies with its mystery and lack of answers. My dad's college roommate was driving home for winter break from Maryland to Alaska. A long road trip full of expectations and plans. Along the way, he picked up a hitchhiker who begged for help. Witnesses said the man was desperate, and my dad's roommate, deciding to help, let him into his car. But the trip turned into a nightmare. Sometime later, police found the car completely burned in the woods. Inside, there were no bodies, no signs of a struggle, just an eerie emptiness. My dad's roommate went missing, and the only possible lead was the hitchhiker. But he too vanished without a trace, as did the driver. The police found no evidence or new leads, and this case remains one of the darkest and most unsolved mysteries. Story 7. The disappearance of Andrew Gosden haunts me. I live in the UK, and even 12 years later, I still see posters with his face on my way to work. It's very sad. Luke Durbin's eyes were also on posters at most train stations for a long time. Luke's eyes, which was again unsettling and very sad. Both went missing around the same time, and both have a chilling last moment captured on CCTV. I think I find them scary because they're local to me, meaning from the same country, and it could have been anyone. Literally anyone can just vanish, and someone could have that last moment on CCTV. It's terrifying. In 2006, an Austrian named Wolfgang Priklopil committed suicide by jumping in front of a train near his home in Vienna. His captive, whom he had held for 8 years, escaped that day. The victim had been locked in his basement. When she freed herself, she quickly found help. The kidnapping received widespread attention. The police were chasing the wrong leads because they didn't expect her to still be alive. 2 years later, in Amstetten, Austria, an even more tragic case emerged. A woman told police she had recently escaped from a basement where she had been held captive for 24 years. Her kidnapper was her father, Joseph Fritzl. He began sexually abusing her when she was 11. When she was a teenager, her father beat her unconscious and locked her in the basement. Fritzl fathered 7 children through rape during her captivity, raising 3 of them, claiming they were foundlings, while 3 grew up in the basement with their mother, and 1 he burned shortly after birth. The police stopped searching for the missing teenager after a brief investigation because Fritzl provided them with a letter he forced her to write, claiming she was living with friends in another city and had joined a religious cult. This can happen anywhere. Comment: I just don't understand how someone can disappear like this in a country like the UK. There are so many cameras, and it's not like Australia or parts of America or Africa, where there are vast uninhabited areas where someone could potentially disappear forever, either due to foul play, getting lost, or being killed by an animal. It's very unsettling that this happens here. Story 8. My cousin's terrifying ordeal. When my cousin was just 11 years old, she disappeared without a trace. It all started when she was walking home from school and stopped at a store to buy a drink. There, a man approached her and started talking to her. He was persistent, but she ignored him and kept walking. When she left the store and quickened her pace, he followed her. He snuck up behind her, covered her mouth, and hit her in the stomach. After releasing her, he dragged her to a secluded spot on the outskirts of town, a hidden house where no one ever looked. There, he kept her for a month, subjecting her to horrific acts. All this time, no one knew where she was, and the search yielded no results. When her last known location was deemed hopeless, the police declared her dead. But a miracle happened. A couple of months later, someone accidentally heard cries and sobs coming from that hidden house. They reported it to the police, and soon my cousin was found alive, though severely traumatized. The suspect was caught and sent to prison. Now she's 21, and though she continues to work with a psychologist, this horror has left an indelible mark on her life. This story isn't just scary, it left a deep wound in my family's heart. Story 9. The Dark Mystery of Zachary Ramsey and the Monstrous Discovery. Zachary Ramsey disappeared in 1996, and his body was never found, despite extensive searches. However, there was enough compelling evidence to suggest that Nathaniel Bar Jonah abducted the boy. The horrifying discovery was that Jonah's journal contained recipes like boy pie, leading investigators to suspect possible cannibalism. The last witnesses, twin sisters, had walked with Zachary for a while, and they are certain he was taken on his way to school, as if someone was waiting for him. It's terrifying to realize such things can happen so close by. Interestingly, my aunt's house, which we temporarily occupied after her death, was right along the road from Jonah's house, and I mentioned this to my mom. She couldn't help but wonder how such unimaginable evil could lurk so close to them. By the time I spoke to my grandmother, she told me how many in town didn't suspect Bar Jonah because of his weight. Many believed that to be a serial killer, one had to be fit and have good stamina. People couldn't even believe he could be a rapist, due to stereotypes that obesity excludes sexual desire. Everything changed when evidence of other child murders and many other horrifying things were found in his home, confirming the worst suspicions. This story is a reminder that evil can hide behind any face, and horrors that seem impossible can be real.
Like, subscribe, and leave a comment. There will be a lot more cool content, and you will help me a lot.